has long been established in Philadelphia an extremely interesting institution, the University Museum of the University of Pennsylvania. There are, of course, in America hundreds of museums, some devoted to art or history, others to natural sciences, or to mechanical and industrial achievements. Yet none has the exact scope and aim of the University Museum. It is dedicated to the recreation of history, that is, to rebuilding the story of man's slow rise from the most primitive states to the heights of the great civilizations. In this cause, for the past 50 years, the University Museum has dispatched more than 100 scientific expeditions to every quarter of the globe, to deserts, to jungles, and scores of distinguished scientists have excavated the sites of ancient hearths and of long-abandoned towns, or have assembled invaluable collections and data among living primitive peoples. The purpose of this motion picture is to tell the absorbing story that lies behind the archaeological work of the museum, the constant quest in the ancient earth for the evidence of man's past, and to illustrate the many and varied steps that bring the tangible objects to the museum and make them accessible for study, instruction, and appreciation, and for scientific usefulness. Since its foundation, the University Museum has been particularly identified with archaeological research in the ancient East and in those lands familiar to us from the Bible. Its very first undertaking was to uncover the extensive remains of the buried city of Nippur in Babylonia. The rich results of the Nippur expedition encouraged the extension of the museum's interest to other parts of the ancient East. Later, its collections were enlarged to include India, Central Asia, and the Far East, those from China being of particular significance. Research both of the buried past and the primitive living cultures was in due course extended to Africa and the islands of the South Seas. Work, too, was early initiated and collections assembled on our own hemisphere, ranging from the Arctic regions and Alaska, from the Indians of the United States and Canada, from the ancient civilizations of Central America and Mexico, even to the countries and long-forgotten cultures of South America. To many out-of-the-way places the museum's workers have penetrated, to Oriental cities teeming with native life. To civilized areas of the tropics, and to virtually unexplored regions of palm and pine. The museum's Tepe-Hisar expedition provides a typical archaeological site to illustrate the varied tasks that confront the archaeologist in the field. There is first the long ocean journey. From the coast of Asia Minor, the personnel of the expedition passes through capitals long familiar in writings that range from the Bible to the Arabian Nights. Over desert trek and high mountain pass to reach its archaeological objective, Tepe-Hisar, ancient town site near Damgan in northern Persia, modern Iran. No matter where the excavations are conducted, if on a large scale, much reliance must be placed upon skilled and unskilled native workmen. The nature of the work and the distance of the site eliminates the use of modern digging equipment, and the workers use only the most primitive implements. Yet no scientific device to obtain records of the utmost accuracy is overlooked. Photography naturally plays a very vital part in all phases of field work. The surveyor, too, is depended upon for accurate maps, and before any spade work starts, the site is laid off in squares like a grid. Certain of these squares are selected for excavation. This grid is then reproduced by stakes and lines on the surface of the ground, and excavations are started within the limits of various squares and carried down to virgin soil, revealing the successive levels of ancient occupation. Careful recording ensures that the exact position of any object in relation to other objects is fixed with the records. Such buildings have all too often been swept bare of any valuables when they were abandoned by their owners, but occasionally things of artistic merit were buried and forgotten. Here we see, for instance, a little alabaster statuette of a bearded cow brought up after 50 centuries underground. When the mud incrustation is brushed off, it is revealed as fresh and as beautiful as on the day it was buried. Most of the pottery vessels that come to light have been crushed by the weight of the overlying earth. These are put together in a preliminary manner at field headquarters, since it is important for the excavator to have a general idea of their shapes, which are valuable for dating. Since pottery is the most indestructible material made by early man, it is for the archaeologists the most valuable guide. A host of other objects in stone and metal, seals, beads, tools, and other sorts of ornaments are gathered from each test pit, and after being registered are set out on the shelves of the field storerooms. More important ones are, however, photographed as soon as they come in from the excavations. Such photographs are sent back to the museum for release to the papers and magazines. Special problems arise when skeleton material is found. Only the most skilled workers are entrusted with the task of uncovering the human burials that are frequently encountered. The bones have become extremely fragile due to long burial, and only a carefully handled knife can remove the encrusted earth without damage. Upon the care with which the skeletons are removed depends a large part of the scientific evidence to be gained, since their measurements may establish racial types. In the course of the Tepe-Hisar expedition, one grave of particular interest was discovered, and it was decided to remove it intact in order to reproduce it exactly at home in the museum. It was the grave of the warrior, and all the bones as well as the objects buried with him are here seen being meticulously uncovered by the most proficient native workmen of the expedition. Tedious work to brush off and lift intact and record the position of every tiny bone and object, but a task that repays the effort when the grave is reassembled in the museum. The warrior apparently died in combat, for his skull was found severely fractured. His bronze helmet shows a hole corresponding to that in the skull, and indicating that he had probably donned it during the battle in which he fell. Objects carved from alabaster were found with him, all designed without doubt for the use of his spirit in the afterworld. We have, however, no inkling of the religion of this remote race to which the warrior belonged, nor shall we have until further evidence comes to light. As the season for excavating draws to a close and before the rain set in, the material assigned to the museum is boxed for shipment to Philadelphia. The government usually assigns 1/2 of all finds to the institution supporting the expedition, 1/2 for itself. Complete records of all finds are made, however, and the final disposition of each piece, whether to Philadelphia or Iran, is noted on the books of the expedition. The boat bearing the cases at length reaches America, and the boxes are unloaded. The long journey by sea and land is almost ended. The cases arrive at the rear entrance of the museum. They're carefully wheeled to the shipping room, and there unpacked by the clerk in charge. The smaller containers are removed from the larger cases and are sent directly to the office of the registrar. Here, every object, every separate bone or vessel fragment is checked against the lists that were prepared months ago in the field. Each piece has on it, upon arrival, a field number which indicates, according to the field catalog, the exact spot where it was found and its relation to all neighboring objects. Because of the archaeological importance, particular care is taken of all skeletal remains. There follows the process of registration and cataloging. The curator is assisted in this by the registrar. The permanent museum accession number is substituted for the field number. The accession number is also entered in the field record book, where an exact drawing of the object appears, thus assuring precise identification. Of each object, a record photograph is then made. This, too, shows the accession number. The record photograph is affixed to the catalog card for accurate identification. Every object in the museum's vast collections has a separate card. The many 100,000 of these constitute the master catalog of the whole museum. From the registrar's department, the objects are assigned to the various experts for restoration and repair. Broken pottery vessels that were temporarily put together in the field are now permanently restored. Piece by piece, the vessel resumes its original shape. This footed cup, decorated with stylized tigers after 40 centuries underground at Tepe Hisar, is now ready for exhibition in Philadelphia. Objects of metal, often heavily corroded by their long burial, must be carefully cleaned in chemical and electric baths. At the end of this process, they regain a major part of their original beauty and luster. All important objects are then transferred to the museum's Photographic Studio. The photographer here makes negatives for use in the final publications. Motion pictures play an important part in modern excavations. The films taken in the field not only form a part of the scientific record, but after editing and captioning, are in demand for showing to school, college classes, and to the general public. When not in use, the films are housed in an air-conditioned storage vault, where constant temperature and humidity are maintained. With objects coming into the museum from all quarters of the world, this process of incorporating new material into the collections steadily proceeds. Usually a majority of the objects, minor pieces, duplicates, and those of limited interest, go into the study storage rooms. These study collections constitute the great scientific reserves of the museum, and the objects actually on exhibition only represent a small part of the material gathered. Selections from the study collections are frequently made for loan exhibitions to other museums, to schools and libraries, and any pieces available upon call for special uses. The inscriptions that may come to light on ancient objects or on clay tablets are transcribed for further study. The collection of tablets reclaimed by the museum's expeditions in the ancient East, thousands from the Temple Library at Nippur, constitute one of the greatest and most valuable body of historical and library documents preserved anywhere. The tablets, over 15,000 of them, big and little, but all important, are stored in velvet-lined drawers. Many of these represent the earliest known writings of man and go back to times when written words were little more than pictures. There are, too, business or religious records of more sophisticated epochs. Still others have inscribed on them maps of towns or of real estate holdings. This particular one, dating from at least 1,800 years before Christ, is one of the oldest maps in existence. Jewelry, beads, metal implements, and scores of other objects, each accurately recorded and cataloged, also find their proper place in modern storage cabinets. However, before allocating the various types of objects to the study storage rooms, a careful selection is made of those of particular artistic or scientific interest for exhibition in the public galleries. The more important objects from Tepe Hisar have reached this stage. The trays containing them are brought to the exhibition floor. They are most carefully wheeled through galleries filled with the finds of the museum's expeditions in the past. And they pass collections gathered from far and wide to illustrate man's achievements and man's ideals since the beginnings of history. The exhibition cases are ready to receive the objects for display. After appropriate labels are prepared, each object is placed in its proper location. The installation of individual objects is relatively easy, but when it comes to the installation of a whole group, such as the Tomb of the Warrior, which we have already seen excavated at Tepe Hisar, more skill and exactitude is required. The papier-mâché foundation for the replica of the warrior's grave has been made ready. The curator carefully follows the field record in directing the placing of the alabaster objects. The silver ewer with its delicate spout is carefully placed in position. Over all the surface has been scattered soil actually brought from Tepe Hisar to make the restoration minutely accurate. Other objects associated with the warrior's burial are carefully laid in. The exposed bones given a final dusting. And the final explanatory label is fixed. The grave of the warrior of ancient Iran thus takes its place beside the other priceless objects which make the museum's collections from the ancient East famous throughout the world. It finds a worthy place near the rich collections of jewelry from the royal tombs of Ur of the Chaldees. Made of gold and silver and semi-precious stones, these were the lavish personal adornments of a queen who ruled over the city of Ur 5,000 years ago. And near at hand is this unusual piece, also from Ur, a statuette of a goat. While for pure sculpture, this small but telling portrait statuette in alabaster is one of the greatest and earliest works of art that has ever come to light. It was excavated by the museum at Kafaji in Mesopotamia, where it had lain buried in a shrine for 50 centuries with a group of other statues of ancient Sumerian priests and high officials. The individual character of the face and the subtle carving of the sleek torso would be the pride of any sculptor of the 20th century. In other cases in the galleries devoted to the ancient East are the fruits of many of the museum's other excavations during the past 50 years in the Mesopotamian Valley. Work on the material brought back by any one expedition does not at all terminate with the placing of objects on exhibition or on shelves in the storerooms. A major obligation of the scientist is the organization of the data for publication, and not until the finished volumes of the final report find their place upon the shelves of the library is this obligation discharged. A shelf full of books may not seem of great moment, yet these that the museum has issued are in reality cornerstones of history, records of scientific achievement of inestimable value to students for generations to come. And during the course of the expedition in the bulletin, reports of current discoveries and progress are made available to the members of the museum, to the general public, to teachers, and to all those who wish earlier news of results than that afforded by other media. Even before the final publication, the pages of the museum journal contain studies of various phases of the work as it progresses. The work of a research institution such as the University Museum literally never ends. Its expeditions and its detailed studies are constantly adding, though ever so slowly, to our expanding knowledge. Beneath the countless mounds of ancient earth lie buried untold centuries of history.